Garden Journal number 11, July 5th, 2017. This time we're going to be taking a look at our experiments into fermenting vegetables from the garden to preserve food, to augment nutritional uptake, and to learn about that ancient symbiotic relationship between bacteria and the human body. So I'll be talking about that a bit, and I'll show you the couple different projects that we've done with working with cabbage, kale, carrots, and doing a truly off-grid form of food preservation, because really you can ferment vegetables in their own juices without any need for technology or exotic ingredients. So if you're in a tough situation and you really need food to last a few more months, that's the way that you'd be able to preserve it aside from drying. So we'll take a look at how we worked on those.
love, you didn't ask for sure. For little love, still gonna need some more. And still, if I'm a richer, then even to the poor. Telling anyone won't matter anymore. I don't really need to be some friend like you. Help me through, never wanna change. If I'm gonna stay, it ain't for too long. Cause the same song everywhere you go. Closer to the sun, far from your moon. I scream and I don't wanna see you. What's going on, Carl? We got my man Carl dancing right here from the Tiny Universe.
Fermentation. Fermentation is the transformation of carbohydrates and sugars into either acid or alcohol via yeast or bacteria. Lactic acid bacteria are the ones we're going to be harnessing in the garden. They're naturally present on the skin of vegetables, fruits, and they can coexist inside of our body along with our gut flora to really augment the nutritional uptake. They break down the cell walls in the food that we eat, sauerkraut or any other fermented food, and all the foods after, because they live in the flora there, and they help us get at the B vitamins, vitamin K, and get like 400 times more of the minerals like iron, magnesium, and vitamin C. Now, fermentation plays more of a central role in most people's lives than they realize. If you eat cheese, bread, if you drink coffee, if you like chocolate, you are enjoying the results of fermentation. It's not just the wine and the beer and the typically things you think of when we think of fermenting. Fermenting is an ancient process that is part of nature but has been harnessed by humans to preserve food, to enhance flavor, and to augment our ability to take up nutrients into our body. So in learning to ferment our own vegetables from the garden or from things we buy from the store, we're getting back in touch with a symbiotic relationship that has existed since the beginning of man, which is the bacteria that live around us and within us that help us to defend off other bacteria that are harmful to our body and help us to break down the nutrients we need. In the human body, there is approximately 10 bacteria for every one human cell. So you can imagine what kind of diverse ecosystem of cells we have in the body. They outnumber our cells 10 to 1. And when you have a healthy flora of bacteria inside of your gut, they don't allow for the pathogenic bacteria to set up shop. They create an environment that is a stabilized acidic environment in your gut. So it's not only going to keep out pathogenic bacteria, but it can reduce problems with acid reflux. It increases immune response because it sets up a wall so the viruses can't get through. So I'm really excited about fermenting foods for that reason, because we can enhance all those parts of the human body. Another reason is that in a world where people are becoming continually more dependent on centralized systems for food growing, for agriculture, and for food preparation and production, they have like 5 people in between who grows the food and them getting it in their hands. So many middlemen in between the love that went into growing something and them eating it. And in that process in between, all kinds of chemicals and the reduction of nutrition happens. So if we start to lessen that gap by forming a relationship directly with the ways to preserve our food and to enhance nutrition, like fermenting, then we truly are stepping towards becoming self-sustaining. Because you take away the massive factories that ferment all the foods that you love, and you'd be in a world of hurt because your body needs those bacteria in there. So we're looking forward to teaming up with the naturally occurring lactic acid bacteria to have a healthier planet and a healthier body. Okay, so first try at fermenting our own garden vegetables, 2017. Here on the left, or your right, we've got sauerkraut made with green cabbage. And then on the left, we've got gundru, which is a Nepalese fermented brachia, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but the kale family of Swiss chards, kales, collard greens, that kind of thing. And this is all kale in this one. So first, let's try the sauerkraut. This one we bought a store sauerkraut first so we could have a frame of reference. Tried it, pretty good. And then made our own, which is bruising all the cut up ribbons of cabbage and then excluding all air from them and letting them soak in their own juices. This one's for 7 days. So, lots of probiotics in here, all naturally occurring. Truly off-grid fermentation. Wow. It's got a nice tangy note, a lot more crunchy than the store-bought one too. So, excellent. And that one can store for a couple months now that the fermentation process has slowed down and we put it in the fridge. Alright, next we're going to try gundru. This one's been fermenting longer, 10 days. And this is 100% kale, same as the other one, bruised up and then fermented in its own juices. It looks really gnarly. Looks crazy. Smells pungent, but I can smell the distinctly tangy lactic acid smell. So from the smell, I could tell that it's most likely been successful in producing the environment that only lets the good bacteria survive and not the bad ones. But when you make this stuff, you want to trust your senses. If it tastes rotten, it probably is. Wow. Very rich flavor. It's like kale times 4 with a nice, sour, earthy end note. So this allows the kale nutrition to be augmented by the probiotics that help you get even more out of it. And it'll keep your kale for months to come. Not for the faint of heart though, potent. So next we're going to try doing a huge jar of green cabbage mixed with red cabbage and maybe some herbs and see how that goes. Okay, so once you've sliced up the cabbage and then massage the salt into it, let it sat out for about an hour. That'll start to pull the juices out by itself. Then we're going to do the final level to get all the juices out, push every bit of air out, and to open up the cell walls so the good bacteria can come in and colonize. So I'm using my mortar and pestle thing, but you could use one of those rolling pins for baked goods or anything really that you can pound away at the chopped up cabbage, bruise it up real good, and you're going to keep doing this. I've already done it for about 5 minutes here, so until it's glistening and until you can grab it by the handful and literally squeeze out the juice. And once you can do that, then you're ready to start putting it in the jar. 5 to 10 minutes doing this. Okay, we'll move on. All right, here we are making our super jar of sauerkraut. So we got our first layer of red cabbage in there, bruised up real good, pushed down by hand. Then every about 2 to 3 inches of cabbage you lay down, you want to sprinkle a bit of salt in there. Salt is going to make it so that the good bacteria have a favorable environment and the so-called bad bacteria, the ones you don't want in your food and in your body, cannot survive. So a layer of salt, then I'm going to put in some green cabbage. We've already bruised this up. And comes the most important part next, which is excluding all air from it. After scrubbing my hands real good, I'm going to use my fist to push it down and get every air bubble out. Because the bacteria we want in there, the lactobacilli, they are anaerobic bacteria. They thrive in a no oxygen environment. The aerobic bacteria are the ones responsible for decomposition, and we don't want them. We want to ferment this. So got to get every bit of air out. Make it so the good guys got space to work. Their favorite kind of space. So get right in there and just hammer it down until there's not one bit of air underneath. And you'll start to see the brine appear now, which is pure cabbage juice, which will become the medium to ferment everything. So once you got it nice and hammered down, you move on to the next layer. Make sure to layer your salt every 2-3 inches until you get to the top. Okay, here we are on layer number 3. Adding the bruised red cabbage. Oh yeah, that's gorgeous. Getting it nice and even in there. Then I'm going to put a little layer of salt again. Just a sprinkling, not a copious amount. Okay, now I got to push it down. Looks like we're going to have a really nice pinky purple brine this time. Full of tons of phytonutrients and B vitamins. Alright, I cannot see any air bubbles down there, so on to the next layer. Alright, last layer. I underestimated the size of this jar. Or at least how much crushed cabbage could fit into it. This is 3 cabbages. We would need 4. So for the final layer, you want to make sure everything is totally submerged so that those anaerobics can take over. If it's not totally submerged, and by the way, on the top you want to use a weight, probably a glass or something to hold it down. Okay, so here we've got our grand fermenting experiment. Last week we created basic sauerkraut with green cabbage. We excluded all air and let it ferment in its own juices at room temperature, and that turned out amazing, very delicious. Had it with some sausages, ate it by itself, great. So this time I'm doing a bit more advanced mixes of vegetables to see how that turns out, so we can use the naturally occurring lactobacilli, lactic acid bacteria, to preserve our garden vegetables. So the smallest one here has a mix of green cabbage, red cabbage, carrot, and ginger. And so I figured that the carrots can carry some nice vitamins and flavor in there, and then the ginger can help to make sure they keep the lactic acid bacteria, the only ones that can survive in there. All right, and then over on the right, we've got the highly experimental one that I've put everything that I think is going to be good to ferment in there. So we got green cabbage, red cabbage, carrots, and red Russian kale, because we made the gundru, the fermented cabbage and kale in its own juices, and that turned out great. So I figure I'll mix in a little bit in here, and ginger as well, and let them all ferment up, and that way you got a full rainbow of phytonutrients and minerals, and we'll see how that works out for the flavor. Then in the massive jar, we've got 3 cabbages, so just all 100% sauerkraut. And that's green cabbage and red cabbage, all bruised up, going to ferment in its own juices. And we're teaming up with our good friends, the lactobacilli, to enhance our nutritional uptake and preserve our goods. Symbiogenesis is a term that means 2 completely separate species working together over eons and unfolding together or evolving together in a symbiotic relationship. Bacteria and the humans are one of the examples of symbiogenesis. In the case of our gut, we have bacteria that have become specifically tailored to thrive in that environment, and our body has become specifically tailored to allow for them and even to give us cravings to seek those out in the environment so that we'll have a healthy gut flora. Another example of symbiogenesis is flowers and bees. They estimate that over 60 million years, bees have adapted their own bodies so that they can work with flowers to gather the nectar to make their honey. And they're the oldest brewmasters, by the way. The bees use their own gut flora when they breathe in the nectar into their honey stomach, their nectar stomach. And then when they spit it back out into the wax cell, they start a fermentation process that turns the nectar into dehydrated and fermented honey. So anyways, the bees have adapted and the flowers have adapted to invite the bees, so they have that working relationship that's gone over eons so that they can be healthier together. So in working with fermenting foods, you're kind of signing a peace treaty with the bacteria kingdom, which humans over the last few decades have really declared war on, with all of our advertisements saying kills 99.9% of germs. Well, we depend upon bacteria. They're part of our body and part of our environment, whether in the compost pile to break stuff down or in your gut to help you get the vitamins and nutrients you need. So we're happy to start signing the peace treaty with bacteria and working with them again. And that's Garden Journal 11 signing out.